Hey everyone, welcome back to the Everyday Retiree. I'm Sabado. I had a powerful conversation with a subscriber recently, and I think a lot of you might relate to his story. So let's go ahead and get into it. Just a little background, he's 63 years old, a successful black professional, but like many of us, life happened. He went through a divorce a few years back and it wiped out a big chunk of his savings, and so now he's left with about $300,000 set aside, and when he starts Social Security and his other income, he'll be looking at a monthly income of about $3,000 a month. He's also considering moving to the Dominican Republic, where the cost of living is significantly lower than it is here in the United States. So, as we discussed, it created a little bit of relief for him. One of the first things we talked about was getting brutally honest about expenses. Not what you think you spend, not what you hope to spend, but looking at what you actually spend. Here's the thing: retirement is less about how much money you have and more about how much you spend. If your lifestyle costs $5,000 a month, but you only have $3,000 a month coming in, that gap will drain your savings fast. So, in my conversation with this individual, one of the things he mentioned is that he may currently have about $3,000 anticipated to come in once everything starts, but his lifestyle currently costs him about $7,500. So that's still about a $4,500 delta. Now, again, looking at moving to the Dominican Republic, that'll significantly decrease that because his housing costs will go down significantly. And he would also be in a position to sell his house, change out his vehicles, and perhaps sell his vehicles. He likes classic cars, and classic cars have a cost of ownership. So he'd be able to sell his classic cars and downsize, because once he started to take a look at, in a rough number in our conversation, what his lifestyle would cost, he also was able to start to pull back some of the items that may reduce some of his costs to get him to a more realistic number in terms of where he's looking to move. So the exercise was simple and kind of eye-opening. Just tracking everyday expenses for about 90 days, writing it down or using an app. For me, I tend to use my Apple apps for just about everything. I sit inside of that ecosystem, except for YouTube, because YouTube's not in the Apple ecosystem. But the idea is to see what's real. When my wife and I sat down and did our budget, we did our budget based on what we actually spend. We looked at our American Express bill, we looked at our bank statements, we looked at the bills that came in and said, look, what is it that we're actually spending? And what that did is it gave us a realistic picture. Now, I know there's some people that are out in the YouTube world that say, we want to see your actual numbers. And there's some pretty specific reasons I don't do that, folks. Number one is I love y'all, but there's some bad people out here on the internet. And the less people know about specific circumstances, the more safe it is for us. The other reason is because I think if somebody looks at our circumstance, then that's going to serve one or two purposes. That's either going to make it look like people can do it that maybe otherwise would not be able to do it, or people may lose hope because they say, we don't have this coming in, we don't have these levers, so I'm just going to give up. And the idea here isn't to compare yourself to me, because at the end of the day, you can only be a second-rate me, but you can always be a first-rate you. So that's in direct response to those folks that say, well, we want to see his numbers and he's not being transparent. Folks, I'm being transparent because I'm giving you the up and down of my story. And if you agree, thank you for that. If you disagree, I'd be interested in understanding why you disagree in the comments, because I seem to get a lot of that these days. But I digress. The idea is here, you want to be able, once you create your budget, to make your decision based on truth. Then your decisions are based on confidence instead of fear. The second thing we talked about was relationships. One of the things that he mentioned to me was that after his divorce, he met the love of his life. And the love of his life is a couple years younger than he is. I don't want to put all of his business out there because I don't think that's fair, but is younger than he is. He's 63. She's younger and has a little bit more runway from an age perspective than he does, and may be in different places. And the key here was getting people on the same page by having the honest conversation, him having the honest conversation with his significant other. You know, retirement isn't just about you. It's about the people closest to you and how your decisions affect them. If you have a significant other that may be in a different age bracket than you are, they may have different expectations. And so you really need to have that honest conversation just to make sure that once you get into that path, it works. One of the highest divorce rates in America right now are among retirees. I suspect a lot of that is driven by empty nesting, where you don't have kids to focus on. I know when I was in my first marriage, I was raising 2 kids, and the way that I was able to not deal with my ex-wife, and I hate to put it that way, but I'm just keeping it a buck with you, is by focusing 100% on the kids. Then when I got to retirement, the thing I realized was how important it was that my current wife and I were on the same page. Because once you retire, you were there all the time. And if you're not on the same page, it can create a lot of stress. And so fortunately, my wife and I don't have that stress because we focused on being on the same page, both having previous lives where we weren't on the same page. And there's other things that come into play. Maybe you want to travel the world, but the partner is happy staying at home. That creates tension. Or maybe you're ready to downsize your house and the other person is attached to the house. So these are all things that you have to get on the same page about. So if you don't talk about this openly, then the resentment builds. But if you sit down and say, here's where we are, here's what we can afford, and here's what matters most, you can make decisions as a team. And that makes retirement not just financially sustainable, but emotionally sustainable too. Now, let's talk a little bit about money strategy. At 63, it's really tempting to say, I lost ground. I need to make it back fast. Here's the truth. Chasing short-term gains usually ends in losses. We had a conversation about one of the seminars that he went to with somebody that was talking about investing. And the long and short of it was the person that he went to see basically was cynical about the investment markets. And I suspect that's because this investment professional, I don't know the qualifications or the standing of this individual, but was trying to sell a product to this person that would have gotten them rich quicker, but ultimately would have just filled the pockets of the person that was selling it to them. So the thing I recommended is whenever somebody tells me something good, I always take it in from the perspective that this person is trying to sell me something. Because if somebody's telling me something that's good and they're dissuading me from something else, then there's a high likelihood that I'm getting the best sides of whatever they're telling me, but not getting all sides. And for me, I've always thought it's important to get all sides of a thing in order to make the best decision for myself. Because the fact is, over the last 100 years, the S&P 500 is functioned and grown at an average, not every year because there's ups and downs. That's how averages work, but an average of about 10% a year. So I don't get too caught into individuals saying that there's going to be a market crash and everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket, because the other thing that I know factually is that with all this economic stuff going on now, what the 1% want to protect more than anything is the stock market, because that's where most of their wealth is tied up. And that's just a fact. So be careful about the people that are telling you about getting rich quick, because it just doesn't happen. One of the things that one of my friends on my YouTube friends, and I suggest you check out his channel, Frank Talks Money, is he says, and I agree with him 100%, is that nothing that's worth anything is free and it all takes work. So if it sounds too good to be true, it normally is. The focus in our conversation was on long-term stability. You know, building a portfolio that's balanced enough to grow to keep up with inflation, but not risky enough to where one bad year takes them out. And my shift here was huge, to stop thinking about doubling your money and start thinking about protecting your money so it lasts. As I like to say, slow and steady, reliable, that's the winning formula. Slow and steady wins the race. Now, the last piece is really personal to me and really touches on not just his situation, but why I run this channel in the way that I run it. And it's something that he brought up. I think it's incredibly important and we don't talk about it enough. one of the things we talked about is that as a Black professional, he spent his whole career having to work twice as hard just to survive. He had to be twice as prepared at meetings, twice as polished, and fighting stereotypes at work and pushing up against systems that weren't always fair, doing it in a world where people are trying to convince you that racism doesn't exist. And one of the challenges is that drive helps you succeed, but it also comes with weight. And I'll just tell you from my own personal experience as a person who worked his way up. When I started this channel, I started talking about the life as a Black professional, and I had a lot of people tell me that it's the same for everybody. And I'm just here to tell you that's bullshit. I'll give you an example. I had my boss one day call me into the office and tell me that somebody reported that I yelled at them. Now, I did not yell at this person. As an HR professional, your job is to maintain the corporate structure of an organization through the effective application of policies and procedures. And so somebody wanted to do something that was against policy. She kept pushing. And I said, we're not going to do that. Almost in this voice, because I wasn't going to raise my voice at work. So because I told her no, she took that as me being aggressive and then went to the CEO because I was being aggressive because I didn't let her do what she wanted to do. And that's a story that as a Black dude, you got to deal with that all the time. If I go to somebody's desk and I talk to somebody at their desk and they happen to be sitting down, I'm towering over them. If I don't have a smile on my face, I'm not what I call bojangling all the time, I'm what's called aggressive or unapproachable. And so these are all code switching words. So having to be cognizant of all of those things every time you go somewhere, every single time you interact, that carries a lot of weight. And part of the shift for this individual, I mentioned to him, is that now you don't have to be out front proving yourself. Retirement really asks you to do the opposite. And you're not in a position where you have to run as hard and you don't have to continue to prove yourself with everything you did, because at the end of the day, you've already proved yourself. But when you retire, it's not easy. I'm used to having to be the most prepared and being the best in the room and being the most knowledgeable and being ready for people to push back. And it really took a lot of unlearning from that decades and decades of conditioning. I told him that here's the truth of it all, is that success in retirement isn't about being out in front. It's about peace. It's about being okay with enough. It's about enjoying life. It's about looking at the life that you took to build and all that time and all those sacrifices and all that weight you carried to build, to enjoying that because you worked so hard to get there, and not carrying those battles into your 60s or into your 70s. And that's a transition. Even if they may not apply as directly as I'm sharing them with you, you still have to contemplate them, because sometimes we just don't know that it exists. We just find ourselves in situations where we're so used to dealing with something that we don't even think about it. So let me bring this all together. Let me package it all up for you. So if you face setbacks in your life, whether it's divorce, job loss, discrimination, or just the unexpected, it doesn't mean retirement's out of reach. So here's the roadmap. Number one, get real about your expenses. You don't have to share them with everybody. Don't create a YouTube channel. You don't have to put your stuff out on blast, but get real about your expenses. Take a look at what you spend, what you need, and create the accountability for yourself. Number two, talk honestly with your partner. At the end of the day, there's only a few people that are going to come to your rescue when times get hard, and one of those is the person that is what you would consider your significant other. So you owe it to them to have a realistic and honest conversation with them, just to make sure you're on the same page. And if you're not on the same page, figure out how you get there, because life is all a negotiation. Aristotle once said that all of life is a negotiation. Number three, invest for stability, not quick wins. Don't try to get rich. If something sounds too good to be true, it normally is. And slow and steady wins the race. Some things just take time. Work with what you got and just try to make it 1% better every day. If you make it 1% better every day, then in 100 days, it's going to be 100% better. So think about that. And for my Black professionals out there, women, when I say Black professionals, I think women, I think all of us that are disenfranchised and that feel like we have to play the game in the workplace. Give yourself permission to stop carrying the weight and of proving yourself. You've already done that, and retirement is about freedom. Allow yourself the space to be free. So this isn't about giving up on dreams. It's about building a retirement that works for you and where you are today, not where you thought you would be. 20 years ago, a lot of us thought we were going to be in places that are different than we are today. So let's deal with the reality and not deal with what we thought 20 years ago. So thanks for spending time with me. If this is home for you, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear from you and your story. I read every comment. I try to respond to as many as I can, but as I said, y'all kind of keep it coming at a pretty feverish pace, but I try to respond to all the comments. If you know someone who's struggling to rebuild their retirement, share this video with them. I try to bring content that's going to help you understand from my perspective what I had to deal with, because now, yeah, Sabado's this retired cat that reached the top, but ultimately, now I wasn't always that cat, and it took me a lot to get to where I am. And also, the last thing I'll mention is that if you would like to schedule a one-on-one with me, please send me an email. My email address can be found in the description below. I'll take your email. I'll respond to you. We'll have a conversation to vet kind of where we are. And then we may end up, you never know, we may end up doing a live episode together, just talking through stuff. So until next time, this is Sabado, the Everyday Retiree, reminding you that it's never too late to build a life of dignity and peace. And it's never my expectation that everybody retire early, but it is my expectation that you live your best life. So on that note, have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.